Hello, hello, and happy Monday, everybody. The poll question today at Smerconish.com asks the following. Do you agree with Bill Clinton that the book Original Sin is being used to unfairly blame Joe Biden for Donald Trump's election? More on that in just a moment. Thanks to my friends at Parks Casino, New York, Philadelphia, Detroit baseball, plus the Pro Golf Tour and the Pro Hoops action, which resumes with I'll say the big series Thursday night. There's just so much going on at this time of year. It's a wonderful time of year. You can live bet it all. You can wager and watch. Live betting is better on the BetParks app in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland, and on the Play Gun Lake app in Michigan. Bet individual player performances in baseball like player hits, home runs, RBIs, strikeouts, points, rebounds, and more for the Pro Hoops playoffs and much more. But whether your team wins or loses, there's always another way to win. That's the fun side of this with the BetParks Sportsbook and online casino app and the Play Gun Lake Sportsbook and online casino app. The only apps that I ever use and recommend to bet on sports and to play all my favorite casino games right in the palm of my hand. You can do it as well. You can play with live dealers, blackjack, roulette, craps, poker. Take advantage of the hot online slots, Cash Eruption, 88 Fortunes, Cleopatra, all that fun stuff. Go to betparks.com or playgunlake.com. Download the app right now and enjoy all the action and excitement from the casino at your fingertips. You've got to be 21 and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Maryland for the BetParks app, and you've got to be 21 and in Michigan for the Play Gun Lake app. You love to play. You play to win. You bet. BetParks on the BetParks and Play Gun Lake apps. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, so last week I had the opportunity to interview former President Bill Clinton and best-selling author James Patterson. James Patterson I had met before. James Patterson is the author of over 200 books. I think that he's not only the most prolific author in the United States, I think he's also the most successful. I mean, he really has it down to a science, and he's been a guest of mine on a number of occasions, both talking about his books, but also talking about his life. He's a really interesting guy. And frankly, my favorite of his books, I hope he wouldn't be offended by this, I don't think that he would be, was the memoir that he wrote, where he told his own story. He was a J. Walter Thompson, Madison Avenue, when really the ad agencies were on Madison Avenue. And he came from that background and completely, changed his life in starting to publish works of fiction. So he has partnered with President Clinton. This is the third time. And President Clinton, interestingly, I had interviewed previously. It's been a long time, but I met, and I've also interviewed Secretary Clinton, including about her work as a fiction writer, as a collaborator with Louise Penny. So you have Hillary Clinton writing with Louise Penny, and you have Bill Clinton now for the third time writing with James Patterson. And I met both Clintons for the first time together like a month ago at a speaking engagement that I was doing and I was moderating, and they too were participants. And I must say, I really thoroughly enjoyed being in their company and having conversation with each. They couldn't have been more gracious. Okay, anyway, with the Clintons on my mind, so this new book, and I have my hard copy. I read it electronically, but I have my hard copy with me. That's the fictitious character who is the first gentleman, and the female is his wife, Maddie Wright. They're both Dartmouth grads. He played football at Dartmouth, and then he played some pro football. He played for the New England Patriots. There's a shadowy chief of staff. His name is Burton Pierce. He's also part of this Dartmouth mafia. And as the book opens, as this beach read thriller written by James Patterson and Bill Clinton opens, the first gentleman, married, to the president of the United States, is on trial. And he's on trial for murder. I'm not going to give, I promise I won't give too much away, but Susan Bonanno was a Patriots cheerleader who went missing 17 years ago, and the first gentleman is on trial. It's a fast-paced, easy, light read, but there's an item of substance in it that I found really of interest. We have been having a number of conversations recently about Doge and debt, the nation being $37 trillion in debt, me being more accepting than most of you relative to the work of Doge. I did a commentary on it on Saturday, as I had spoken on Friday on radio, making crystal clear that I don't embrace the methodology used by Elon Musk and Doge, lack of transparency, cruelty, um, inconsistency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm appreciative that for the first time since 2010, on Obama's watch, when it was Simpson Bowles, somebody is talking about debt. And I know that fiscal responsibility is an important subject to President Clinton. So, as a matter of fact, the last time the nation had a budget surplus was on his watch. And on Saturday, when I talked about Elon Musk, the poll question at Smerconish.com, we had 52,300 on the button, 52,300 vote on the question of which has been a bigger impediment to the work of Doge. Was it the way Musk went about his job, or was it the institutional, the bureaucratic resistance? 79.46% said it was the way Musk did his job. 20.54% said that it was the institutional resistance. All right, so back to the Patterson and Clinton read. So in reading this book, which is all about whether the first gentleman committed murder, there's like a subplot, or there's a sub reference to the first lady. Pardon me, she's not the first lady, to the president, who's female, Maddie Wright, trying to get through Congress a grand bargain. And as you're trying to figure out whether the first gentleman is guilty of murder, you keep hearing about the grand bargain. And then finally, on page, it's a long one, but it's big type and it moves fast. On page 452, and I go into this with President Clinton and with James Patterson in the interview that I pre-recorded with them last week that airs today on radio. But on page 452, we finally get the full sum and substance of the grand bargain. What is the grand bargain? It is an attempt to restore fiscal responsibility to the United States. Quote, over the next 40 minutes, this is now to a joint session of Congress, President Madeleine Wright tells the entire country the truth about what is facing them and how they can turn it around, and how they can save Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the economy with new revenues, new savings, and if they don't work, changes in the entitlement programs to extend the lives of their trust funds to 30 years out and keep them there, while gradually lowering the national debt as a percentage of annual income. In other words, you're in the middle of this fast-paced whodunit, and all of a sudden, for like 3 pages, comes a very substantive model about our debt and deficit. It is very specific. The fictional president of the United States, quote, the United States will pass a 15% global corporate tax rate. So even companies that put their profits in tax shelters will pay that. The increased revenue will also go into the lockbox to pay for entitlements, along with new revenue from repealing the carried interest rate, which currently taxes the fees fund managers automatically earn, usually 2%, whether they make or lose money or don't invest at all. And it goes on for another 2 pages like that. So in the interview that I did with President Clinton and James Patterson, which airs in the second hour of today's radio program, of course, I talked about that. And I wanted to know of President Clinton, this clearly has your fingerprints on it, although Patterson said he was gung-ho to include it in the book as well. And I said, I remember what it was like when I wrote Talk, because I had a very serious message in, I'm going to reach for it. I had a very serious message when I wrote Talk, which was to talk about the poisonous influence of terrestrial AM talk radio and the implications that it was having on our political discourse. So when I saw this, I'm like, okay, I get it. President Clinton he wants to help Patterson write a book for shits and giggles. They make money. They're fun to write. I get all that. But he didn't want to bypass the opportunity to say something very serious about our current fiscal posture. And I asked that of Bill Clinton. And as you'll hear, he totally confirmed it. Like he wanted to get this off his chest. And when I said, well, is this your blueprint for what would do it in 2025? And he said, this is an approach. So in a nearly 500-page work of fiction, you get President Clinton saying, this is what we need to do about our debt. And that was the focus of my interview with Patterson and Clinton. However, others drew President Clinton more into the current political debate of the day about President Biden, about former President Biden. And so yesterday, they aired on CBS's Sunday program an interview that President Clinton had done where he was, of course, there was passing reference made to the book. You know me, I'm the sucker. I read the book. And then when I've done the book, I want to have the conversation. This weekend, I read Dawn Staley's book, the Temple legend, the USC, University of South Carolina, the Olympic gold medalist. And I really appreciated the book. I'm sure others are going to interview her about the book, and they're going to try and sneak in a question or two about Caitlin Clark. But I read her book, and I'm taken with her story. And in similar fashion, I'm focused on what they want to talk about when they write a book. But others, perhaps wiser than yours truly, because it gains traction, instead ask Bill Clinton, what does he make of what Trump is doing, and also the recent book about Biden, Original Sin by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. And in responding to that question, here's what the CBS coverage says. And this leads to today's poll question. Asked about a recent book on President Joe Biden, which suggested people around him had seen signs of cognitive and physical decline, Clinton said he never saw any cognitive decline and did not feel that Biden was fit to run for president. I thought he was a good president, says President Clinton. The only concern I thought he had to deal with was, how can anybody do that job until they're 86? And we'd had long talks. I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his briefs. Asked about the book, Clinton said, I haven't read the book. And I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought that he was in good shape, but the book didn't register with me because I never saw him that way. Asked why he hadn't read the book, Clinton replied, I didn't want to because he's not president anymore, and I think he did a good job. Now here's the key part. And I think we are facing challenges today without precedent in our history, and some people are trying to use this as a way to blame him for the fact that Trump was reelected. And I thought, oh, there's the poll question. Is that what this is all about? Do you agree with Bill Clinton that original sin is being used to unfairly blame Joe Biden for Trump's election? And I think it's fair to imply from the statement that Clinton is saying they're blaming Biden for Trump's election, and that's unfair because in the quote that I just shared with you, Clinton acknowledges that some people are trying to use this as a way to blame him and referring to Biden for the fact that Trump was reelected by using that phrase, trying to use this as a way. He's suggesting skepticism or disapproval of that line of reasoning. I know I'm giving you too much of my reading of the tea leaves. I think it's pretty obvious, but I want to know, do you agree with President Clinton that the book Original Sin is being used to unfairly blame Biden for Trump's reelection? I guess I could have said this much more simply, but you wouldn't have had all the background if I had simply said, is it fair or unfair to blame Biden for Trump's election? What's my answer to that question? I think that Biden made it nearly impossible for anybody to successfully run against Donald Trump because he ran for reelection and waited too long to get out. And that if Biden had never run for reelection, or if he'd gotten out sooner, there could have been a healthy competition that would have yielded a different candidate than Kamala Harris. She was not a strong candidate. I mean, look right now, the stories that are out there today talk about the ambivalence even of California Democrats to having her run for governor of California. There's not a clamoring for her to be the person. And that's reflective of her just not having been a strong candidate. I'm not convinced it would have been Harris had there been a competition. And I think someone other than Harris would have been a strong candidate, would have been a stronger candidate than Harris. Go vote on today's poll question. Do you agree with Bill Clinton that the book Original Sin is being used to unfairly, my stress, unfairly blame Joe Biden for Donald Trump's election? And I look forward to being able to air. There was an embargo on it, and I'm looking forward to being able to air my Clinton Patterson interview on today's radio program. Like and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Set yourself up for notifications and know that I appreciate you. See you, gang.